Hello, guys. Welcome to Project Expository's podcast. In this podcast, we have Kanishk Chowdhary with us. We'll be discussing about core engineering in the mechanical department. So first, I'll be introducing Kanishk to you all, and then we'll be going through a few of the questions that you sent us, and we came up for as queries for mechanical engineering code placements. Kanish Chaudhary is a 2018 batch with Pilani mechanical engineering student. He has done internship as an R&D intern in Boston Scientific and as a project intern in ISRO. In college, he had multiple PORs, some of them being the president of ISRE, which is Pilani Student Chapter. Plus, he was the co-founder of Chapter 9 and 3 Quarters Tech Private Limited, which was a startup that Kanishk and some of his friends co-founded. I really thank Kanish for joining us for the podcast and helping us build the mech core track and also helping everybody with the information and input that you provide on mechanical core engineering.
Thanks for having me here.
Now we'll be going through the questions. In mechanical engineering, what are the exact career tracks that one can opt for or the career tracks that are offered in the campus placements?
So I'll first mention about certain interest tracks which you can take forward through certain project selectors. So most of them I've mentioned in the Notion doc, which would be released in the project expository file in a couple of days.
Yes.
So some of these include like computational mechanics, manufacturing, sustainability, robotics, product design, thermal fluids, HVAC, and supply chain operations. The final one, some people consider it to be part of core mech, some don't, but supply chain is a mech del, so I'm adding that within the core mech. In terms of the campus placements, so campus placements are pretty erratic in nature. You have new companies and new roles coming in every year, but some of the older companies may not come maybe for the future batches. For example, like I'm just telling a random example, like aerospace companies do not come for placements right now, but who knows, like by the time first rights come into placements, they could come. So that's why I kind of avoid mentioning career tracks and use the term interest tracks, because there's no guarantee that a corporate role would be in the same track which you wish you'd pursue in your undergraduate. This is kind of unfortunate, but then that's how it goes in, I think it's kind of like a similar situation in every branch. In terms of like preparing for these tracks, a lot of them require to be just proficient in your CDCs or certain electives. There could be some automobile companies like Bajaj Auto, Tata Motors. They could appreciate some experience in tech teams like Inspired Carters. But I've noticed like other students who have just academic projects instead of tech teams, they have been selected too. So that's not, a POR is not really an important criteria. For the supply chain and operation roles, they would require you to take supply chain management elective, along with some relevant project or internship experience in similar roles. Then comes the R&D roles. R&D roles can include like various interest tracks. You could have R&D in thermal and fluids, product design, sometimes even manufacturing. So if I take the example of Mercedes-Benz, they come for PS2 and they give PPOs through that. The selection for PS2 is of course CGPA based, but they have a lot of projects in simulation and computational areas. So for that, a proficiency in Python could be an advantage. If I generalize preparing for these interest tracks, a lot of companies will just test your CDC knowledge and they can ask you here and there regarding what projects and internships you've done. And the roles, again, like each company could have different roles and some roles might not even come. That is what they'll mention in the PPTs, or you can always ask them what roles you would be working on.
Is there any difference when I choose one track over the other? Like suppose I want to go to computational fluid and till now, but I'm also confused whether I like I'm confused between two tracks. Let's say one is robotics, one is fluids. So will there be a difference between them in terms of preparation as for my projects or the other things? Can I sit for the placements and be eligible with InGen core projects that the companies may look for?
Yeah, so in this case, the less specialized you are in a particular field, the better it is. Because let's say if you get into robotics too much in depth, you do a lot of projects or research based work in that, then companies would think that you're more suited for getting into an MS. And that usually happens with a lot of COMEX students. I don't know if this is the case of being overqualified for a job, but I've seen certain people like who have a really good MS profile not getting shortlisted for placements. So if you have like a generic core mech profile, let's say you've done a couple of projects here and there in different fields, different areas of interest, then for a placement point of view, it is enough. And they don't really require you to be specialized in any field, because once you join into the engineering role, you get trained to specialize in whatever they wish for. So if you wish to like specialize in one particular field in detail, make sure that you have the option for masters open as well.
Okay, so amongst these interest tracks, which ones have you tried and which ones are you aspiring to get into?
So in my last 3 years, I've kind of like dipped my hands into various tracks. I did a couple of projects in sustainability. My PS1 and thesis are in robotics, which is mostly like the computational simulation stuff. And my summer internship at Boston Scientific was mostly related to product development. Um, During my undergrad, I couldn't really figure out what aspect of mech I was actually interested in, but I knew like I was able to cancel out some lack of interest in areas like fluids, supply chain, even material science. So I like when I joined campus, I just planned to explore as much as I can, maybe find my fit here and there. And then if I wish to specialize, I could like specialize during my master's or through the work experience or role which I'm allotted. But I might not really recommend this to everyone. So if you're like in your first or second year, it's better to like check your CDCs and electives and see what is more interesting to you, and then try your best in like sticking into one area or maybe 2 areas, but like not going like more than that. Also, like you can go through your second and third year courses and cancel out what you don't like. Yeah, canceling out is kind of like an important thing which helped me as well figure out what interest tracks I could take. And yeah, I mean, like that can be done with others as well.
As a first year, right, or a second year, right? If someone is considering mechanical code for their career, what are the possible ways or sources from where that they can get enough exposure of the mechanical industry, let's say?
So as a first year, right, the earliest exposure you get to mech is through workshop practice and thermodynamics. These two like compulsory courses are there. Although they specialize like one aspect of mech, it doesn't really cover what all you can do. But still, like that is like the first exposure you get to what mech is all about. Then maybe like once the first year ends, so me and like a couple of my batchmates as well, they went into internships right after the first year in the during the summer. So this was either like through a personal contact or like by contacting somebody who's in your hometown. So the benefit about internships earlier on is it checks whether the engineering projects which are going on, they're actually like something which you're actually interested in. And these kind of like early internships which you do before getting into like studying what mech is about, these are called industry immersions. So industry immersions include like unpaid training or even job shadowing. And again, like they help a lot in understanding the industry, understanding what roles other employees have in the company. And such an early exposure, it helps a lot to like develop your interest. And there's a high chance that you might start off by having great interest in mech, but then through this exposure, you kind of see that maybe the work is like too boring for you. So this decision, like if it comes as early as possible, like maybe towards the end of a first or at the starting of a second year, that would help a lot. And if these internships are like not really possible, then I think like talking to seniors or alumni who are in the core sector, they help a lot. And of course, like BITS has a really great alumni network with people in various industries. So you can always like stalk them on LinkedIn, try to connect with them, and they'll be happy to help out.
You talked about this internships, right? So like since now we are considering first years or second years, they won't have a lot of core knowledge since they haven't covered most of the core subjects. So like, are there any prereqs for these internships? Like do they need to study or learn a skill apart from what they have been taught in college already?
Okay. So like for a lot of people, PS1 is like the first exposure to the industry or to how the internship works. And even for PS1, there are no prereqs. So let's say if you have a particular skill set, it helps. Otherwise, you can learn skill sets along the way and then apply it in your PS1 project. And most often, like it just becomes a simple learning or simple exposure based learning in which you don't really apply or do any impactful project right from the start. So these type of internships, even the industry immersion ones, they don't really require you to be like proficient in anything. Let's say like apart from PS1, if you're trying to like contact someone in your hometown or through personal contact, you just let them know that it's a short-term internship or training or job shadowing. Like these terms are pretty much common in corporate, and they take in a lot of students and a lot of like early undergrad engineering students, just to like provide an exposure because they're not really paying anything from their own pocket. So for these, like you don't really require any prerequisites.
Okay. How and when did you decide that you can take up core mech as a career option?
So I think since class 11th, like maybe like towards the end of class 10th, when I decided to take up science instead of commerce or arts. Since then, I was kind of certain that I'd want to work in some innovative engineering role. In my class 11 to 12th, I also developed an interest in programming because I had my fifth subject as computer science, in which I like learned C++. So like after talking to some of my family members who are also engineers, um, I also like talked to my profs in my first year. I connected with some alumni through LinkedIn, and I realized that I could like use my knowledge in engineering, specifically mechanical engineering, with interest in programming to like really create an impact. Especially because the current era of engineering is a lot more dependent on computational work. This is like something which my naive first year mind thought that I could achieve. Of course, like there's no guarantee that I actually end up doing this in the future, but at least like the ambition or the interest in core existed since my first year. And like having targets like this, it's as early as possible, it helps a lot.
So are there like any future prospects after getting into core and like if someone wants to switch their career path in core to a different track or to a different career path, like apart from core altogether, are there any options for such prospects?
Okay. Talking about the first part of the question, so future prospects after getting placed. So mostly like your entry level job through campus placements would be of a trainee. Like the common role which you like hear coming around during the placement session is GET, graduate engineering trainee. So in this role, you don't really get into like impactful work or helping with the company right from the start. So you get trained for like 1 or 2 years, and depending on how your training goes, then like after this period of like on an average 1.5 years, you usually get promoted into an engineer two or sometimes even an executive or an assistant manager. And like
Uh,
since
I'm
like
sorry,
people
Kanishk.
say that the
I think your video got stuck. Can you just repeat the last two, three lines? Because
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, so I was saying like at the starting you get into a training role, and this training goes on for 1 or 2 years depending on how well you do this training, and then after that you get promoted into engineer two, executive, or assistant manager, and they're like similar terminologies which depend from company to company, and it's known that the growth in core it's exponential in nature. So including being a bit senior, you have that caliber, so you usually end up in a leadership position within 8 years, sometimes even less. These leadership positions are like in the role of project or product manager. And there's like always potential to rise above the ranks within the company or like switching over to another company. Again, like this process is pretty generalized. And like as you rise through the ranks, your focus kind of shifts from like doing the core mech research work to more like management oriented tasks. Talking about like exit options, switching from like one field to a completely different field, it usually requires a master's. And otherwise, like with the same degree or with the same experience, it's kind of tough to like switch to a completely different role. And for example, like if you've done engineering, um, you have the work experience of an engineer for let's say 5 6 years, it'll be tough to switch to finance without having an MBA. So a common option is go for an MBA or some other business or finance degrees. And if you want to stick within engineering, but then switch from one industry to another, let's say you're in automobile right now, you want to switch into, let's say, the medical device industry. So going for an MS and specializing in that will help if you want to switch your focus from one industry to another.
Okay, cool. Now, I guess we have enough information about the industry in general and how can one explore it. So let's just talk about the placements, about the core placements, and a lot of people are confused with their core resumes, with what to add, what to not add. So let us discuss those. So what do you think a perfect core resume should consist of, and what are the things that can be avoided, that which are not really important?
Okay. So every core resume has to have your CGPA, internships, projects, achievements, and PR. And this is in the order of like most important to least important. Um, Internships and projects, they will help a lot in interviews, sometimes even PORs. Like during the interview, they can ask any one of these, and then they can ask some questions related to it directly. Apart from that, a resume might not be as important as how it is in, let's say, in non-core or in ID. So core companies, they want that your CDC knowledge is up to the mark. So of course, like CGPA is an important criteria in judging that. Including that, they have like a lot of tests, and in some technical interviews, they ask you questions in your CDCs. So resume, although it is an important point in getting placed in core, your knowledge and your proficiencies in your CDCs and electives, that's even more important. And there are certain parts in your resume, like let's say like some people mention what languages they know or what certifications they have, maybe like Udemy or Coursera certificates. These are not really important for core. Of course, like they will ask what technical proficiencies you have, but you can just mention that directly without adding certifications. And even better than that is like um, add in a project type of course in which you have used that technical proficiency. Let's say you mentioned that you're good in ANSYS. So what project have you done in ANSYS? So mentioning that aspect in your technical skill sets, that's like more important than just mentioning what certifications you've got.
And you also mentioned achievements in it. So can you elaborate a little on that?
I think like it kind of helps that you have an all-round profile. So PURs in itself are fine. Like you tell them like you were the president or the leader of some club or committee, but what were the like the notable impacts you got out of this PUR? So that is one important aspect in achievements. It's not just like you're doing something for the sake of it, but you're also getting some good outcomes out of it. There could be some good outcomes in like in any um, not just like in your technical profile, but in your extracurricular, co-curricular achievements. So rather than just mentioning your co-curricular activities, like let's say you play cricket as a hobby. So if you have any achievements related to it, of course, that creates a bigger impact than what are just some curricular activities which you do for fun. So the achievements is kind of like a broad term. It can include everything. But adding that is, it creates a bigger impact than just adding something which you did, Like you must have done something, you must have participated in something, but what did you achieve out of it? That's kind of like a little bit more impactful.
Talking about the projects, like there are projects that you can do on campus, like as a part of your course, like soft develop and some informal soft develop too. So are these projects enough for a core placement resume, or would you recommend one to do like projects from external sources, like from other universities or something like that?
Okay, whatever projects you do as a part of your courses, it could be informal, formal, not just your SOPs, but maybe some projects in your CDCs or electives as well. So these academic projects, along with your PS1 and the PS2, they are enough as long as you have a decent CG. By decent CG, I mean around 7.5 plus, and to be safe, 8 plus. Otherwise, if your CG is like low below 7, you can try to like counterbalance it with some really impactful project or internship work. Like as you said, including off-campus opportunities as well, like projects through universities. But at the same time, if you, let's say if you have a good CG and you do all those extra projects as well, companies would again think that your profile is much more suited for an MS. So you have to make sure that you're not really doing too much. As I said, academic projects with your PS, it is enough for a core company. Anything more than that can be little too much overachieving.
Okay. So in case there's a third year, right? He wants to try his luck in mechanical code, but unfortunately he hasn't done any projects yet. So like, are there any online sources from where or any other source from where he can do projects in a shorter period of time?
Okay. So if I talk about like just for the sake of placements, so CGPA is of course an important factor, and if that student has like entered into his third year with a decent CG, then of course there's always a chance he can take like one informal project in 3.1, apply for a SOP in 3.2, and it should be enough because like a 7 plus CG can also get a good PS station, and that also creates a good impact in your profile. If you're a dualite, of course, like you just add 1 year to whatever I'm saying. If you don't have a good CG, then of course, like the important point would be to get it like above 7 at least. And in terms of resources, again, like if you've not really done anything in terms of skill sets as well, you might need to like start early on. So again, like look at what type of projects you want to do in your third year. Look at faculty profiles. You talk to professors as well. So the best resources you have are the professors at FITS. And it is always like, it's always good to maintain good relations with even a single prof. Do some projects under him and all, because he or she might have some other resources as well, which students don't really have an access to. Yeah, in terms of skill sets, again, like you first check what interests you want to get into. Let's say if you want to get into robotics, you might have to learn programming. If you want to get into thermal or fluids, then ANSYS is an important skill set. There are many free and paid resources online through which you can learn. YouTube for me is like the best place because it's free, and unlike Coursera, you don't really have deadlines for it. So it will be tough because you have to like learn some new skill sets. You have to start your projects as soon as possible. At the same time, you have to like maintain and improve your CGPA. But I've seen people, they have done it, so it should be possible, even though it can get a little tough.
For someone who's sitting in core mechanical placement, you have given us enough information. Can you like summarize it in a way that like what could be the ideal progress one can make year wise if someone has already decided in his first year to sit for core mechanical placements?
Okay, so if you're in a first year, the main thing is your CGPA. So if you have a good CGPA in first year, it kind of sets the standard for your coming years. Even if it's low, it's possible to improve it through mech CDCs, but a good CGPA right at the start will kind of relieve the burden in your coming semesters, in which like you can focus more on the project work. So first year will be like CGPA, explore your interests as well. Maybe you might think that mechanical core mech is the way to go, but you need to be confirmed of your choice, and vice versa as well. If you think that you're in mech but you want to get into non-core, still keep an open mind, explore various fields, and if possible, join a tech team. So tech team experience, it also helps a lot. In the summer after your first year, again, like you explore, you can start learning a new skill. And as I mentioned before, like if you have any chance for an internship or industry immersion, you can take it. Coming on to the second year is when your CDCs will come. Again, like CGPA, you have to like maintain or improve it. And you can also use the second year in upskilling, maybe like improving on the skill sets that you learned during the summer, or learning a new skill, or from even getting into the advanced levels. And in your 2-2, you could like you'll have to apply in your 2-1, but you can keep a stop in your 2-2. Like getting in project experience early on would also help in the summer internship season, which comes in a 3-1. If you're a dualite, then second year will be similar to your first year because you haven't started your Koban CDCs. That starts in the third year. So your second year and your first year would be almost similar in terms of exploring and improving CGPA or even getting into tech teams. The summer after that is, of course, PS1. Unlike Common Notion, it is important to have a good PS1 project, especially when you're sure that you won't have like any other, if you won't have like a lot of other project work to put on a resume. So a good PS1 work, like even if it's a learning experience, it would help a lot in your resume, at least for placements. Like after that, you might not need it, but at least for internship season and placement season, PS1 could be important. In your third year is when you start working on a project. So try for like a SOP or a DOP in 3-1 or 3-2. Maybe towards a 3-2, at least 2 or 3 projects, 2 or 3 good projects would be enough for your resume. So along with like improving or maintaining a CGP, you can start working on projects. You can even upskill in different fields. So in 3-2, like you will need to be proficient in Python. Some courses would require MATLAB. So not just learning like something which you're interested in. Let's say if you're interested in ANSYS, then not just stick to ANSYS, but also explore like other things like MATLAB. The summer after third year would be a choice. Like if you got selected in the internship, then that will happen. Otherwise, some other project work or maybe PS2 if you're studying a PS2 from 4-1. And coming on to the final year would just be like preparing for placements, revising your CDCs because that test round and even the interview round, they can ask a lot of questions from that. So revising your CDCs would be important in your final year. And then whatever semester you've taken your PS2 thesis, you'll have to do that.
And can you list down the major do's and don'ts for one's resume?
Okay, I have mentioned the resume building process in detail in the Notion document. So I would recommend everyone to like have a look at it. To summarize that, do not like fake info on your resume anywhere. If you're aiming for core placements, don't add a lot of non-core projects and internships. And like, for example, if you have a lot of them, it's better to like prepare for non-core roles instead, because you have better chances of getting in that. Don't write long paragraphs. So it's good to have like bullet points, short bullet points, not exceeding 1 line. Don't make any grammatical errors. I would suggest like you Grammarly or copy paste whatever you have added in a resume into the Grammarly software. There are Grammarly plugins as well, which you can use. And try not to use the same resume for more than 2 profiles. So if you have, let's say, an R&D, if you're applying for an R&D profile, you could describe your projects in a more research-oriented way. And if you're applying for like a supply chain or operations role, then it's better to like not mention the jargons or the technical terms of mech, but more on the impact which you've created. Coming on to the do's, keep your resume within one page. Don't exceed one page at all. Avoid blank spaces as much as you can. So blank spaces not just include whatever space is left towards the end of the resume, but also within each box. Let's say if one line is too short, the other line is too big, then there'll be a blank space created over there. So try to like avoid those as much as possible. Use bullets and one line points everywhere. Avoid pronouns. So um, instead of mentioning I designed so and so component for this machine, it's better to like just say designed so and so, like removing the I pronoun. Keep an OCD check. So this is an interesting point. If you don't have OCD, then find someone who has OCD and get it checked from them. You'll be able to find a lot of like minor mistakes. Let's say a double space, a double blank space, or not having two or three lines like in the same ending sequence. So keeping an OCD check in resume is important, and it also makes it nice and neat and legible. And of course, get your resume reviewed as much as you can. So send it to your friends, your peers, seniors, alumni, if you can find an alumni, even your parents. Like get all of the reviews. It's your choice to like accept or reject whatever changes they've suggested. But people think that the resume, whatever resume we've made, is perfect, but you will never have a perfect resume. So constant changes is important.
Okay, so can you describe your experience of building your resume, and like how long did it take to get to a decent resume, and what are the key features of your resume? Like, what are the points that you have emphasized on?
So I started off with the superset resume in July last year. That was for the summer internship session. And I think from there, it took around 2 to 3 months to get my resume into a good state. And that resume helped me to get the summer internship offer at Boston Scientific. But even now, when I see that old resume, I feel like I could have made a lot of changes and made it even better. So as I mentioned before, like that helped me to realize that you will never get any perfect resume. And since then, like around once or twice every month, maybe even thrice every month, I keep on making like small changes here and there to my resume. Not just like updating it for, let's say, the current projects I'm doing, but also changing the wordings here and there, making the bullet points precise, like adding lots of information in short sentences. So that's something like which I've learned along the way, like while I kept iterating and making changes to my resume. Yeah, and key features which I emphasized on, as I mentioned previously, internships and projects. So you'll have to make sure that whatever you mention in that, it highlights the impact which you've done or the learning outcomes, rather than just like mentioning the details of the projects. And of course, mentioning the technical proficiencies which you've used is important, but also what you've learned along the way. So that information could get long for some people. So it's a good practice to like compress it into single line, single bullets everywhere. And about PORs, PORs was like the thing which I kind of changed the most, because at the starting I was just mentioning whatever role I had, let's say with my startup or with my tech team. But I added details regarding the impacts which were created out of that leadership position, and putting points which highlight impact or learning outcomes. Again, like that's pretty important.
Now we'll be discussing about the placement rounds that take place in the campus placement. First of all, can you list down the major placements rounds that mostly all the core companies take?
I'll kind of like generalize it into one point, because every company has different selection procedure. So usually at the start, there's resume selection and shortlisting. Some of the popular companies would have that because they'll get in a lot of resumes and they'll have to like select the top ones out of it. but a lot of core companies, they don't get in a lot of applicants. So there's no need of like resume selection in that. You directly move on to the next round. The next round usually has tests. So you'll have like technical tests as well as non-technical tests. In technical tests, you'll mostly be asked like MCQ questions or like one-word answers, covering almost all the CTCs in mechanical engineering. Some of my batchmates have told me that the second year CDCs are more important for those rounds. So you like really need to like make good notes right from the start and ensure that you revise all of them thoroughly by the time the test comes. For non-technical tests, you could have like quant-based questions, simple analytics or data analytics type questions, mean median mode, graph analysis, something like that. There are also like psychometric tests in which like you don't really have to prepare anything. They just test your aptitude and behavior. After that, group discussion rounds could come. So like what's happening right now in online is there's a moderator who could be part of HR, who could be an employee in the company. He tells everyone to like switch on the camera and all that. Within one meet, there'll be around 7 or 8 students, could be less, could be more. They give a topic. Some companies would tell you like you have like 2 or 3 minutes to prepare. Sometimes you don't even get preparation time. So yeah, it's better to like prepare for the worst in these scenarios. And the topic which they ask in group discussions, they could be pretty generic. They're not always related to mechanical engineering. So what happened to me during the internship round was they asked a group discussion on what is better for a company. Is it innovation or is it invention? So that's kind of related to engineering, but there are also some other companies which ask related to the current scenario or whatever is happening in the news. Some debatable topic from that. So it's for that. It's like it's good to have an open mind and read about what's happening, not just within engineering but around the world. And finally, you have interviews. Again, like some people have one interview, some people have 2 interviews, and we haven't really been able to figure out who gets one, who gets two. So if there are 2 interviews, you might be asked the same questions from a different panel, or you might be asked technical questions in round one, again, like covering your CTC knowledge, and second round could be like simple HR questions. These HR questions are pretty generic, like some questions like give 3 words to describe yourself, what are your strengths and weaknesses, and all that. One important thing in interviews is they might ask in the end, do you have any questions for us? And what I've realized or what I've heard from other seniors is it's always good to have a question ready to ask them, uh, preferably a good question, because it kind of highlights that you are actually interested in the company. You've read about the company beforehand, understood their functions and all that. So asking a question at the end, even if they don't say that you have any question for us, like before the interview is about to end, you just ask them your question directly. So in any way you can show that you're really interested in working. That helps a lot during the interview rounds.
These are all the questions that I had for this podcast. Would you like to give everyone who's preparing for core placements any kind of tip that has not been discussed in the podcast that I missed asking you?
Yeah, so I've noticed a lot of questions are related to the preparation materials. So I think like this question comes a lot from the IT sector, because in IT you have like a lot of online materials to learn from. You have even like you have to like learn stuff related to DSA or algorithms and all that. Apart from that, like in IT, if I'm not wrong, like you have to be good in competitive programming as well. So I think like these questions, similar questions are asked in core placements as well, but you don't really have to work that much to get a core placement. So whatever CDCs which you study or electives which you study, if you're good and thorough in that, it's enough. The most important part most important preparation in core placements is learning about your CDCs and electives. Apart from that, I've noticed like towards the end of final year, almost everyone gets in some good project work through SOPs or through informal projects. Even like PS1, PS2, that has an advantage, like being Bitcoins. Otherwise, like if you're for some other college, you'll have to like work even harder to get those internships. So being a Bitcoin, having the flexibility of working on different kinds of projects, it would help a lot. And apart from that, you don't really have to work that hard to get a co-placement. Yep, that's pretty much it.
Kanishk have also prepared a Notion page in which he explains about all the interest tracks which are present in core mechanical engineering and tracks about how to pursue them and how to prepare for placements and how to properly build your resume or CV. So I would request Kanishk to give a brief description about the Notion page that he has created.
Okay. So yeah, the first page includes the interest tracks, which I've like mentioned over here. If I open this, there's a really colorful table, which includes the interest tracks which you could work on, relevant electives and CDCs related to it, and what technical proficiencies would be required in these. I've also added the mechanical faculties in BITS who are working in these areas. Um, these will change semester to semester. So we have new faculties coming in or faculties going out. But hopefully, like there are a lot of like common interest tracks which people take. I've mentioned about that in detail. And again, like for all the viewers, like if you have more details which you'd like to share, you can feel free to contact me and I'll keep making changes to this. Then yeah, I've also like focused in detail of the technical proficiencies in mech and also added some basic learning resources. These are something which I personally thought would be enough, but it depends from person to person. You can always search on Google for any good learning resource and then apply it. I've also added some details of the different programming languages which you can learn. What are the differences between them? And yeah, personal recommendation, MATLAB is an important programming language in engineering, not just in mech, but in other core branches as well. And from MATLAB, you can always jump into Python and the C++ and Fortran, they're kind of like luxuries. You don't really require them unless you're working on some big project. I've also talked about different CAD softwares. So I'll personally recommend Fusion 360. SolidWorks is important in the industry, but they don't have a student version, which is free. Student version is paid. And simulation software ANSYS is the most important. And ANSYS in itself would cover everything, not just in mechanics, but in thermal and fluids as well. So the applications are too vast, so I've just added a core answer over here. Regarding the resources for summer internship or campus placements, so I've given an overview of the various rounds. Also some information for creating a good superset resume. This is based on like my own personal experience and from the experience of a couple of batchmates. There's also an additional article on creating a good non-superset resume. So this is pretty simple. A couple of seniors have given a talk on it, so I've added the PPT here. And these 3 templates are really good, which you can make on LaTeX. And these templates kind of include like everything which you need to know. Then placement testimonials and internship testimonials. So these are again from seniors and batchmates who have gone through the process. They've given their inputs over here. The placement season is going on right now, so I'll keep this updated with a couple of like more batchmates who got placed. So like ExxonMobil, Bajaj Auto, they've already hired a couple of people. So I'll update all these like to add the current final year batch as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And hopefully all this content should be enough. Like I feel it's enough, but even if it's not, if you wish to, if you want me to like include anything else, then yeah, feel free to contact me and I'll add them over here.
That is a really helpful Notion page that you've created. Thank you so much putting in so much effort in helping us and everyone who would want to pursue core or would not want to pursue core but would like to at least explore it.
Yeah.
It is really helpful. We'll be putting this page on the project expository for all of you to have a look at it and explore the areas and look at the things that you want to see in detail. So thank you, Kanishk, for joining us on the podcast.
Again, thanks for having me here.